Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third and final day of the ninth EPALE Community Conference. I'm really looking forward today, and we've had two fantastic days so far. Just to let you know that your input, your comments, your questions, your suggestions, your emojis help us understand how much you've been enjoying the conference so far. And you've helped to shape our conversation with our amazing set of speakers. So let's keep that up today. Make sure that if you're on the EPALE platform and watching, you need to be registered in order to submit your questions and to contribute. And you can also do that on other social media platforms. And that's particularly important for today because a little bit later we have an interactive exercise that's going to take place, and we will need you to engage with us. We're going to be using a tool called Mentimeter, and I'll tell you more about that when we get to that part of the program. But just to signal to you now, we will require your input in order to do that piece of work. So thank you very much for joining us. We know there have been many of you across all the platforms listening, sharing, reposting, because the content is absolutely wonderful. But we've got something special for today, and we have a new feature. We have Paolo Mazziero, who is a graphic facilitator, and he's going to be drawing live as he listens to our conversation and as he takes part. He's going to be capturing some of the key ideas and some of the concepts, and he's going to be doing drawings, and you can see him doing it now. And at the end of the morning, he's going to share with us the graphic images he's created as a result of listening to our conversations that you get to shape by sending in your ideas. And his graphic facilitation, as well as the recordings from the last 3 days and all the links to the amazing resources that we've been sharing, that was all part of the rich content you'll find on the EPALE website and platform. So you can use it and share it afterwards. And thank you so much, Paolo, for being with us today and helping to capture some of these big conceptual ideas in graphic images. And we know how important visual imagery is to learning and to capturing new ideas. So that's a new thing we're trying for today, and I hope you enjoy it very much. Now, when we opened the conference on the first day, I gave a shout out to the 14 national support services who, together with this event, have decided to organize something in their own local language to bring together the community in their country, to sort of build momentum, to really celebrate what's happening in adult education. And every day we've linked up with a couple of them just to say hello, find out what else they're doing. So this morning, we're going to be linking up to Serbia, and we're going to Belgrade, and I'd like to say a warm welcome to the NSS team, Tatjana Petrovic. Hi, good morning.
Hello, hi. Good morning. Hello, Tamsin, and hello to all colleagues from CSS. Thank you for this remarkable conference. We have been enjoying it so far. Hello to colleagues in other NSS as well, and to all the participants here in Belgrade and elsewhere in the Europe. As a side event for this conference, NSS Serbia is organizing a workshop on media and digital literacy. Our aim today is to present teachers in primary education for adults with guidelines on how to use digital technologies for career and personal progress and how to stay safe in this medium. So, apart from our NSS team members, we have Ms. Anna Mirkovic, and the colleague she arrived, not yet. She is a psychologist and a digital communication expert who is running our today's event. And of course, we have here our participant. The first session on our agenda is the live stream of the Christoupas Saborius, I hope I pronounce it well, the name, speech, after which we are proceeding with our media and digital literacy workshop. So we wish you all a successful last day of conference, and believe it or not, all the best from very, very sunny Belgrade this morning. So thank you for everything, and see you.
Thank you, Tatjana, and lovely to hear what you're doing. Did you enjoy the first day of the conference where we were really discussing some of these big digital and tech ideas? Did that help act as inspiration for your activities for today?
Yes, of course we did. Yes, it was a great inspiration, for everyone. Yes.
Excellent, thank you. And how do I say goodbye in Serbian?
Do widzenia. It's a quite difficult.
Do svidania? Do
No,
svidania?
do widzenia. Do swidania is a Russian word. Do widzenia.
Vidyenia. Okay.
Or
Thank you so
zdravo.
much. And vidyenia to the colleagues in Serbia, Belgrade. Good luck with your event.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. It's really lovely to just get a little sense of the activities and the energy and the feeling that you have with the different NSSs. So thank you so much for connecting in with Serbia. And we'll be talking to another NSS a little bit later. But let me now introduce our keynote speaker for this morning. And we have something a little bit different because my next speaker is Kristubas Sobelius, and he is a professor of philosophy at Vilnius University in Lithuania and a research affiliate at the MIT Climate Visions in America. And he's the co-founder of the School of Creativity. And that's been a great theme, by the way, through our conference the last 2 days. And that's a platform that's designed to foster innovative methodologies in education. He's got a number of publications, most recently called Imagination Beyond the Anthropocene, that was published this year, on the Real from 2021, Matter and Imagination from 2018. So clearly lots of ideas coming forward that you are presenting and publishing. You are also a member of the Swamp School at the 16th Venice Architecture Biennale, and you've co-written some film scripts as well, including The Gambler from 2014 and Invisible from 2019. So you live the creative dream. You're working on that, and you also bring some of that philosophy into the education space, because it's that interface between philosophy and education. That's the space you work in. And we're particularly interested in exploring with you some of the issues you touch on, which is reality and imagination. And we're going to start by the fact that you have developed an emerging theory of something you're calling milieu, and that is going to be key in the way we approach sustainability, which is the theme of today's conference. So can you please tell us, you apply this concept of milieu to education. What does it mean, and how would it change the way we approach adult education?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shamsin. Thank you all the EPALE community. I also may add one more thing, that I work intensively with the EPALE community in Lithuania. Today I also have an event there, and I will give a lecture on artificial intelligence in relation to job markets of future. So basically my collaboration with the sector of education is very manifold. I work with children, I work with teachers, I work with adults, and also I'm also a university professor. So I've been analyzing the role of education in all, let's say, different regimes. How do we educate ourselves? And for me, the question of education is the most important one. I think I was, as you rightly pointed out, I was involved in creative endeavors. I wrote scripts, I worked with artists, I still continue working with artists, but I kind of arrived at a certain point in my life that the biggest art and the biggest power and the crucial question pointing to both our creative nature as humans is the question of education. So that's how I started to think, how do we educate ourselves also being adults? And sometimes we think of education as a tool to get rid of naivety, especially when we think about children. So children are kind of installed into reality. We give them tools to deal with problems and challenges and with the complex reality. But if we look at the reality of today, especially of the complexities that shape our world, for instance, technological advancement, ecological crisis, ongoing wars, and the rise of artificial intelligence, sometimes I have a feeling that adults are even more naive in this sense because of the complexity of the real world. And this turns us either into passive observers, we say, I don't really understand what's happening there. It's too far from me. It's not pertinent. It's not relevant to my world. And we are sometimes cut off of reliable criteria how to make plausible judgment that is needed in order to have real knowledge, you know. And when we discussed this also with you, Tamsin, beforehand, you mentioned the question of post-truth, and I think it's very important. You know, we live in a post-truth era, but you know, what is post-truth? I would ask myself. It is not that the truth does not exist. It is that we don't have reliable criteria how to apply a sound judgment to the facts that are either too distant from us or too complex to grasp them directly. This is how we become vulnerable to manipulation, you know, regardless of our education sometimes. I saw plenty of university professors who were speaking very doubtful things because of the distance to the facts they were experiencing. So the question of education today, and I will arrive to milieu here very soon, is an urgent need, especially for adults, for all of us, to unlearn and relearn the relationship with the world that surrounds us. You know, in different theories, there is this idea of a black box. For instance, in computing, in engineering, the black box refers to the system which is kind of very common to me. For instance, the phone. I have a phone, and I can put an input. You know, I press the button, and there is an output. I call somebody. You know, but essentially, it is an opaque system to me, and I don't know the internal mechanism. It's a black box. I know how to operate it, but I don't know what's really happening in there. So basically, we apply the concept of the black box to not only to the technology devices, but also to institutions and governments and the politics that is happening around us. And I guess here where the theory of milieu steps in. What is the concept of milieu? The concept of milieu, it's a French word. You know, in French, milieu means nothing else than being in the middle. And sometimes it is used interchangeably with the idea of environment. So we say we are surrounded by a certain environment in natural or cultural terms, the same way we may state that we find ourselves in a certain milieu. However, I think that there are significant differences in relation between these two terms. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but I think it is wrong. The key distinction here is that environment primarily refers and emphasizes the separation from individual. So basically, it is me, a human individual, and there is environment that surrounds me. And this is how I start the learning procedure. I observe the environment and I try to understand. Whereas the middle, being in the middle, being in the milieu means that I'm already in the fluxus of things, in the fluxus of relations, which define my existence, and I'm interconnected, entangled, and I cannot separate myself from environment. I'm already the part of it. So basically, if environment emphasizes the separation and detachment, the milieu puts an emphasis on being somebody's milieu already entangled with. So what does it mean? What does this interconnectedness and relationality mean to the education? I think that we may apply the concept of milieu as the extension of phenomenon-based learning. phenomenon-based learning is a Finnish methodology of education. They apply it in schools, but I think it's important to learn this methodology also in our everyday lives for everybody. Basically, it says that we need to be active in the engagement with our knowledge, and we need the holistic approach to the world in order to understand it. And that holistic approach, meaning that I incorporate different perspectives, different topics and different disciplines, different fields of knowledge, starts from here and now, from the middle I find myself in. So if I, for instance, analyze global warming or pandemia, so the first step in learning would be looking for constituent parts, for other elements that lead me to that phenomenon, that lead me to this global issue that threatens all of us from here and from now, from my milieu, from my being here now. And it's not a simple task. I often have this series of courses with adults and with teachers, and I tend to learn that we don't know many things about what constitutes our surroundings. And we tend to, or we pretend to say that we are very knowledgeable of what is our world, our closest milieu. But in reality, when we ask the right questions, we understand that the first ignorance, the first moment of the lack of knowledge is here and now. So how can we make judgments about the world that is distant from us when we don't know what other parts constituent that constitute our world here and now? And this is how I think we need to start our learning process. You know, to see what relations make my world. What are the parts of it, what are the cultural influences, what are the biological influences, and then through this analysis go to the very distant phenomena and try to understand them. So this is the core of the theory of milieu, and I think we can continue in pointing out other elements, but I think we can stop it here as the premise.
Hi, sorry, Tamsin is having a little technical problem. This is Sarah from the EPALE team, but I can continue a little bit on what you were saying while we wait for Tamsin to come back. You were mentioning climate change, of course, which is also linked to today's topic. So, of course, this is often the battlefield in the culture wars, where it's difficult also to establish what is true, what's false. So, so we wanted to know how would the milieu approach help us to take action also on climate change? So, a few words maybe on this. Thank you.
Yes. You know, when we speak about climate change and also about all the ecological problems, very often we have the tendency of two opposing trajectories. On the one hand, we may have this very isolationist idea of us being separate from the world and saying that, okay, we need to follow our interests. We need to think how humans should survive, and this is how the extraction policies start. You know, we think, okay, this is our cultural world, we need to protect it, and the nature threatens us. On the other hand, we have this discourse of love, let's say, and we say, okay, we need to get back to nature, and we need to respect nature, and nature is beautiful, and we need to abandon our interests in order to protect nature. So both of these positions, both of these points of view, are very questionable, you know. And I think this is where we need to introduce something less egocentric and less naive, you know. And I think the theory of milieu that I'm developing is about that. In the writings of Michel Serres, French philosopher, who proposed to abandon the idea of environment, he said that the idea of environment is based on the role of a parasite. You know, parasites treat their environment egocentrically. They want to absorb all the nutrients, all what benefits them, and to make the advantage of it. And then when the sources of their benefit die, they just leave it and go in search for other sources of food. But we tend to forget that parasites are also symbionts. You know, there is the idea of symbiosis behind that. And when I speak of the theory of milieu in ecological terms, I must say that I want to introduce the idea of symbiosis on the long run. So symbiosis is about being the relationship of three typologies. There are parasites, there are commensalists, and there are mutualists. And basically, it's about who benefits what. So parasites is the relationship when only one species takes advantage of others, whereas mutualists is the situation where both species benefit from the relationship, and commensalism is when one species takes advantage and the other is not harmed. And in the history of evolution, usually this relationship is shifted. You know, usually parasites tend to become commensalists and mutualists because they see that the strategy of parasites is not sustainable. So we will die if we remain parasites. And in the middle of all of it is the negotiation. We need to negotiate between the species. And I think the theory milieu is about the negotiation between the species. We need to abandon the naivety of saying that, okay, humans have been too cruel to nature, too extractivist, too dominating. We need to abandon our interests. That will not happen. And also, I think we cannot forget that we still need to maintain our interests. We need to be here and now, sustaining our society, sustaining our culture, and having a certain progress. And the process of negotiation leads us to the idea of what I call socio-biological imagination. So basically, it's about saying that, okay, all the ecosystems, all of the species have their interests. For instance, there are trees in the cities, there are animals in the cities, there are bacteria in the cities. What role do they play? What is the ecosystematic meaning? And how does this affect us as human beings? And when we get this knowledge in the middle, then after that, we may ask another question. How should I limit myself in maintaining my relationship both with culture and nature, and also maintaining my interest, and how other interests of other species, of other agents constituting our world may step in, as we do in normal process of negotiation between companies, between countries. So we need to negotiate with the world. And I think this is the crucial premise that may change a bit, you know, our interaction with the realities we live in. So the theory of milieu is basically the theory of such socio-biological negotiation.
Thank you. I found that really fascinating, but largely because in my head I was trying to think about a negotiating table, and you think, well, you have both sides on both sides of the table, and I was thinking, okay, I can see humanity piling on one side, but how does one negotiate with all of nature? Because the examples you gave, the symbiotic relationship, and I'm thinking, there are tiny little fish that live around the mouths of sharks, and they go in and clean the teeth of the sharks. They get food, the sharks get clean teeth. There are loads of examples. The little birds that are on the backs of elephants that eat the ticks. So I can completely grasp that concept, and I love it. But I'm just trying to think, how would that work when we're talking humans on the one side and kind of all of nature on the other? How does that negotiation happen? I understand it's a conceptual framework, and I like it, but I'm also thinking how I would describe it to my kids, who are 9 and 11, to say, well, we need a new relationship to nature, we need to negotiate. How would we make that concept practical?
I think this is what is happening, for instance, here in Lithuania. We have a huge discussion on the role of the trees in the cities, because the trees are very important because they provide clean air through this photosynthesis. They make our cities greener, but also they need more space. The pedestrian areas are harmed by the roots of the trees, and there are people who are saying, no, we cannot commute in a proper way because those trees are impeding our commutation, and this is where negotiation happens. So you put your interest, okay, commutation, what else? Maybe your interest is also clean air. Maybe it's our interest to live in a greener world because we suffer less from cancer. So basically, I think this is where education starts as well. So we say, okay, what is the role of the trees? How much they occupy of space in the cities? We need a lot of knowledge in planning, urban planning of parks, areas, and so on. But also there is a rational level or the limit of the existence. There will be trees that will be cut out of our cities, and their branches, their roots also will be harmed. So let's not be naive. Not every tree will be saved in the city. And so this is a very practical example. It's ongoing discussion here in Lithuania. And also the role of, for instance, of open areas, of green areas in the city is sometimes seen as the threat because there are different diseases by insect like ticks, encephalitis and others. So basically, do we need to cut all the grass from the cities because you can, there are ticks here and you get a disease? Maybe there are certain areas where the kids play that we need to cut, but also there are areas we need to leave them as they are, in wild nature. So that's what I call negotiation. You need to learn. Firstly, there is a lot of knowledge needed in order to put all those cards on the table, and then to analyze on the political level in order to provide this discussion.
Great. That's I'm starting to capture some of those ideas, and I'm wondering that some of the big conflicts that are facing humanity might benefit from this sort of more negotiation approach, like climate change, social injustice, conflict. They can't be solved, or we've been unable to solve them with our existing mindsets. And we need particularly a paradigm shift in our sort of production, consumption, economic model. And you touched on that this is what's holding us back. So far, nothing's really emerged as a feasible alternative. So we need to imagine something different. We have to be able to create that new relationship. And you're proposing that the dynamic of negotiation and being able to set out and say, well, let's quantify what environment nature provides for us so that we can build that into the picture. It's almost personifying nature, so that gives us another person on the other side of the table. We understand that dynamic. Two people their interests, they negotiate it around a table, and you're almost anthropomorphizing nature,
Yes.
so that we can consider that on the other side of the table and actually have a conversation. Is that a concept that would work with, some of these other big challenges of climate change or social injustice? This linking into what our minds do understand, which is negotiation, playing off different interests, finding compromise. Is that what we need to do?
I like that you brought in the concept of personifying, as if we were in the situation of animism. What is animism? When we say that all the nature has this human face, has this human agency, let's say. And I think that's really important. There is this premise, there is this theory coming from anthropology by Eduardo Vieira de Castro, a Brazilian anthropologist, who says we need to learn something from indigenous communities in Amazonia, because all the indigenous communities in Amazonia have this primordial mythology, or at least some of them, that in the beginning, all the nature, all the species were human. So it's vice versa. It's not that we developed into the humans, but in the beginning, the world began as the primordial humanity. And then we developed into different species. But the humans are in the beginning, not at the end. And I think that's a very beautiful mythology that helps us to understand, in a way, what we lost. For them, for indigenous communities in Amazonia, there is no problem. They have no problem with the respect of the nature, because all the nature is human. Of course, we may say they are, they lack understanding, they lack the scientific knowledge and so on. They don't know that the nature is not human and so on. But I think it is human in relation to respect, in relation to reciprocity. We may take one important element, and that's the shift in imagination already. And as you know, for instance, there are countries in South America and elsewhere, like Ecuador, which grant human rights to inanimate objects, as rivers or trees and so on. So basically, there is legal system, there are laws that have been changed accordingly. So if you affect the river, if you harm river, you will be charged in criminal terms. And of course, river is not human in Western worldview, but river, if protected as ecosystematic being, may help us to understand what we are doing to the nature, because humans understand others only through the lens of human face. The more humanity we would put into that discourse with nature, the better we understand what is harmful and what is resourceful and what is important and so on. Because we need those mythologies, we need those imaginations in order to communicate. That's why we for our children, we show cartoons where fish speak, where there are dragons, there are lions who are kings. These cartoons say us that the world of nature has the human face. That there is a moment of humanity in all of this, and that's the question of imagination. That's why we need narratives that appeal to us, that make us emotional, that make us, but also enable to understand the interest of others. And this is my main point. We need imagination in order to grasp sometimes very complex things. We need imagination to translate the world of complexity into the world of our understanding. That's the first point. The second point is we need to negotiate after that. When we, having understood that, we need to continue with negotiation, which is the first step is about grasping and making it understandable for everyone, because we understand art, we understand narratives, we understand things that simplify the world but make it appealing to us. And secondly, having done that, we need to continue with negotiation, leaving the naivety and emotional side, because negotiation is about socio-political argumentation. You know, we need to, which can be informed, which can be based on scientific arguments. You know, so I think that's the strategy I'm proposing. But yeah, and also, if your question dealt with the like social injustice and conflicts and so on, I think that that's also an important moment, that pretty much the conflicts that we are facing now are marked by the strong mythologies, by strong imaginary premises, you know, be it religion, be it the idea of nation, be it the social, political, or geopolitical system. You know, it's about the shared imaginaries. But you cannot fight the imaginary outside the imaginary. So we need novel imaginations in order to change our worldview. And so, of course, it's a complicated and very challenging topic, but I think we need to imagine better. We need novel imagination in order to produce the world of the future.
Thank you. As you've been speaking, we're monitoring our social media platforms. We've had lots of thumbs up and hearts, and people are liking it. But I'm also going to give people the opportunity, if they'd like to ask you a question, to find out more about one of the aspects. So I'm leaving that open. Guys, if you've got a question you'd like to ask Christopher to explain a little bit more, now's your opportunity to pose your questions. But at the same time, I'm just going to go forward a little bit more, because I was very interested in earlier in your talk. You talked about naivety, that we sort of tended to have either a very idealistic and slightly naive view of romantic view of nature being this beautiful thing that somehow we as human beings have come in and made it dirty and bad. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got this, you know, humans are here and we should exploit everything we can find here for our own purposes, and that we need to find something in the middle. But you also talked a little bit about, you know, when things are too complex for us to grasp, we oversimplify. And it's part of the problem of climate change. And I know we're going to talk about that later throughout this morning, is that it's such a big problem. It's a wicked problem. It's a challenge. And it's hard to get your head around the timescales, the impact of what to do. So and you talked about we need a new imagination to sort of find our way forward. How do we make sure we don't fall into the trap of over romanticizing here's this beautiful nature, and recognizing that, you know, nature is evolving and has changed, and species have appeared and disappeared with or without human help. That is in itself a challenging situation. So how do we find that new imagination, and who should lead it? Is this something where we need our politicians to make decisions, but are they the right people to lead this new imagination? Where does it come from?
Yes, that's a very important question. I think we need to get back to the question of education here. First of all, I think this romanticization of the idea of nature, and also all the fantasies, all the work of imagination tend to be detached from reality. You know, so the threat of imagination and is not only oversimplifying the question of reality, but also detaching it from it completely. We say it's just a movie, it's just a fantasy, it has no relation with what we with the reality I live in. Usually we conceive a reality as something purified from imagination, as something that has no imagination in it, but the real situation. I have no fantasies here. And I don't think it is true. We don't stop imagining, even in the most threatening and unpleasant situations of reality. I think that's why we need to re-educate ourselves also in relation of the idea of imagination. What is imagination here, and how we use it? And this is where, with my theory of milieu, I propose to apply another concept. You know, I work on the concept of imagination. I work on the idea of imagination, which is based on the concept of compossibility. I will explain it in brief terms. So usually when we speak of imagination, we tend to use the term of possibility. I say, let's imagine a possibility of us being in a role of politician, or let's imagine a possibility of us going on vacation, or let's imagine a possibility of this political party winning the election. You know, we always work with possibilities in imagination, because possibilities are not real. If they become real, they are realities, they are actualities, they are actual things. Whereas whenever we speak about possibilities, they are imaginary. But what is then the question of compossibility? I find it in different writings. For instance, in the writings of the philosopher Gilbert Simondon, who is a French philosopher of the 20th century. But it's rather not important here. The important thing is that compossibility is the idea of shared possibilities, the possibilities that overlap. You know, so it's compossible. Com, Latin word meaning with, you know, and possible meaning that is possible. So compossibility is the possibility of coexistence. So how do we imagine the world without naivety? It is whenever I imagine, I also take into account the possibilities of the others. So what are imagining others and how these possibilities encounter each other? And that's a difficult process, but I think we can, you know, getting back to the question of ecology and sustainability and also global warming, you know, I think it's also the question of possibilities of other species. So basically, I cannot analyze the world of ecosystems in their nature. I cannot say, I know what this tree is imagining. I know what this tree is thinking. I know what this world of this alien species to me is about. It's impossible to me. But what I can know is what are the possibilities of their thriving. I can analyze the possibilities through the idea of existing, of progressing, of having interests, of living together, you know. So basically, the consciousness, the world, the mind, the inner state of other beings is inaccessible for me. But the world of possibilities is always accessible for me because I can analyze it. So this is why I can, imagining others and being with others without naivety, imagine other possibilities, imagine the perspective of their possibilities. So that's my proposal.
Thank you, Christoph. You know, this has been absolutely fascinating, and it sparked lots of ideas in my head. And I know our audience has found it interesting as well. We've had a comment in from Sandra, who is putting forward a sort of metaphor of compost, because it is both a material and an environment where, you know, new possibilities happen and lots of different elements are required. So thank you for that. You've triggered lots of thoughts amongst our participants. Sadly, we're out of time for this conversation, but I know that the NSS Lithuania is organizing an event with you later today. So the community there will have a chance to take these ideas a little bit forward. And you've left us with this idea of possibilities, which is, you know, imagining things with and thinking about other things. You've encouraged us not to be naive, but to be practical. And you've again said, because a hypothetical, an imaginary thing is imaginary, you can do all sorts of different things with it, and we can imagine different things. So you've encouraged us again to use this power of creativity, something we heard yesterday and the day before about the power of narratives and the ability, if you free your creative mind, that you can create these new narratives that have the capacity to shape our world and our identities. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Christopher, for being with us this morning and setting up our day of conversation about sustainability so beautifully. And I know lots of people have said they loved Paolo's drawing that people saw. So at the end of the today's conference, you will all have a chance to see what he's drawn. So thank you, Christopher, and good luck with your conversations this afternoon.
Thank you, Tamsin. Thank you, Paolo, and thank you all the community. It's been a thrilling morning, and let's keep on. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So we're now going to hook in with one of our other NSSs that's organising an event, and we are going to the lovely green island of Ireland. So I'd like to say a warm hello to, hey, oh, we've got the flags as well. Good morning. We're colour matched. I've got my orange on as well.
Sorry, we have way too much energy.
Yeah, so hello to Mark Guerin and Isabel Loughran. You're going to tell us, from Dublin, you're going to tell us a little bit about what you've got planned for your community.
Yeah, well, today is the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. So we actually chose today as our day to do an event, which is a conversation with one of our kind of national organisations on Kassan, looking at breaking down barriers in education. And we're really looking forward to that. But that's going to come later on in the day at 2:30. And you can sign up to it online. But we had a great day the other day with the digital transition. We had an event with the National Learning Network where we were joined by educators and learners who were working on digital skills, and education through Minecraft was one of the things that was covered. So it's been a really fun, kind of inspiring week.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Education through Minecraft. We should have a topic on gamification and use of other tools. In fact, I think it was Joe who on the first day who gave us the perspective of how technology has been used. And he described, one of the first, big supercomputers that was designed to be used in an academic university for research purposes. And what the students wanted to do was write games and have fun. So I'm glad that sense of fun and technology is still in there in your work today. So thank you so much. Good luck with your event, and greetings again to Ireland. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always lovely to link up and find out a little bit about the flavour of what people are doing. And interesting that today is the official day of eradication of poverty. So that's, I think, a nice theme for us to take into account. We covered that topic a little bit yesterday when we looked at the power of adult education to support economic opportunity and give people a new chance at life. And we were particularly talking about poverty and exclusion yesterday. Okay, now I promised you at the beginning of this morning that we would be doing a new activity, that we'd be doing an interactive session, and now is that opportunity. I'm going to first of all introduce the person who's going to work with me to do it, and then I'm going to explain to you about which tool we're going to do. So first of all, let me say a warm welcome to Serena Mancini, who is a research scientist at GFN, which is the Global Footprint Network. That's a think tank and a research network which measures and compares the resource demand of humans and Earth's capacity for regeneration. So that's where you're from, and we're going to be using something called Mentimeter. Now, there's two ways that the participants can engage. We're going to put a QR code on the screen, and you can do the usual, hold your phone up and take it, or you can go to mentimeter.com, and then you will need to put in this code that you've got on screen. So two ways to do it. Either hold your phone up to the screen, and that will automatically take you into the space we're going to go to, or you go to menti.com and you put in the code there. That's 81933912. So that would also take you into the space. And we're going to be using that to ask a couple of questions. And before we go any further, I just want to say congratulations to Serena and your colleagues at the GFN, because it's just happened in the last few weeks that the Nobel Sustainability Trust has announced the winners of this year's Sustainability Awards. And one of the 3 awards goes to your co-founder, Dr. Mattis Wackernagel, recognizing his leadership in implementing sustainability measures. So we have a Nobel recognition on our conference. So congratulations to you and the team for that.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Good morning, Tamsin.
Hello. So we're going to be talking about the concept of the global footprint. Now, a lot of people will have heard of something called a carbon footprint. We've been talking about that for a while. Carbon budget, carbon footprint. How does that relate to this bigger concept of a global footprint, and what does your network do?
Yes, you're right. Carbon footprint has become quite popular in the last 20 years. And maybe let's remember carbon footprint, it's an accounting tool that measure that measure the amount of carbon emission into the atmosphere and also other greenhouse gases. Now, at Global Footprint Network, we actually work with the ecological footprint, which is has been introduced in the early 90s by Mattis Wackernagel, as you mentioned him. And so basically, the ecological footprint provide a balanced view of the supply and demand of the natural resources and ecosystem services that we use. So to say in other words, and more specifically, ecological footprint tracks how much biological productive surface we use for producing the resources that we need. And the tool is also able to compare that demand with how much surface we have available. So now, in relation to carbon footprint, the ecological footprint goes a step forward because we do account for the carbon emission, but also translate the carbon emission into the land needed to sequester those emissions. But then we do not only demand carbon footprint, land for sequestering carbon, we demand cropland, grazing land, and fishing ground for producing our food and fibers. Then we demand the forest land for producing, timber products. And then we need the space to build our infrastructure, like our houses, roads, and railways. So these are the 6 land types. And I saw a picture coming up right before, and that is how we represent the 6 land types that represent the ecological assets upon which we rely and we depend on, because we all depend on nature and what nature provides us.
Thank you. So, I mean, it's much clearer the way you describe it, because there is a limited amount of land. There's only one planet, and there's land and environment and nature, and that's one use of land. But there's also the land we live on, the land we need for food, the land we use for extraction and production. So you highlighted for us that it's that connection between us and our individual needs, and that all of those different needs have a requirement to draw on the land. So what we're now going to do is we're going to be about to launch Menti, everyone. So make sure you've got Menti open, because the first question we want to ask is we want people to think, what do you think contributes the most to your overall ecological footprint? And we've given you a series of categories of things that are related to you as an individual and the way you live and what you do, and what you think contributes the most to your overall ecological footprint. So again, there's Menti. That's where you need to go to. And that's where we're asking you this question. So it's where we're challenging ourselves to think about the concept of the ecological footprint, as we've just heard from Serena, that it's down to the land use requirements, that whatever it is we're doing requires land, whether it's to extract food from the land, or it's minerals from the land, or it's space because we need roads and houses, etc. So we're challenging you. We've given you a series of categories, and so we've given you, is it transportation, household appliances and IT, all the gadgets that we have? Is it food, clothing, personal care, or housing? So we've given you some potential categories, and what we want to find out from you is, what do you think contributes the most to your overall ecological footprint? So we're starting to get in some messages here to see what it is people think that is their biggest. And again, let's remember what Serena said. It's to do with what the land requirement is for those things. So we're getting a couple of things that seem to be leading. Food is coming through, and transportation. Yeah. So Serena, looking at that, is our audience correct, or have they? Is there something they're underestimating? And again, these results are happening in real time. Help me understand what people think is their biggest ecological footprint category.
Yes, well, in the end, all our single action, they pose a pressure on the environment. We need the resources for every single action of us, and that's interesting that transportation got the most of the answer, and that's maybe also because maybe we know that transport implies carbon emission, and so as a carbon footprint, as we mentioned before. And anyhow, it's also interesting to see what's the perception of people, as you said, because unless we have some tool, some indicator, we cannot know what our impact is. But so let me say that the ecological footprint results can be seen from two main viewpoints. So one is the land types upon which our pressure is placed, the 6 land types that we have seen before. But footprint result can be also seen from the viewpoint of the action that cause that pressure. And so this may be more relevant for people to understand what they do and what causes the pressure. And so each one of us can get different results based on their lifestyle, of course. But at Global Footprint Network, we do calculation for countries and for also region and the world as a whole. And as European citizen, we have some results, and on average, of course. And I can tell you that the biggest driver of ecological footprint at the European level is the food that we consume, and the food contributes 30% to the total ecological footprint. Then transportation comes second, indeed. The share is like 20% of the total footprint. And then comes the housing, which includes, electricity, heating, and water consumption. And then we have services, including personal care, and goods, which include clothing and IT devices. Yeah, so this is the ranking on average for Europe and European citizens, as we all are.
Thank you. And that's quite a surprise, isn't it? That food takes up 30% of that. But one of the events that I've been moderating recently looked at food waste. And we know that about a third of the food that is produced is wasted. It doesn't actually get eaten. And the vast majority of that, 70% of it, happens in people's fridges. It happens at the consumer side. So it's food we buy and we don't use, etc. So if 30% of our ecological footprint is food, and we as individuals are wasting quite a lot of it, that for me signals that there's room, that things we as individuals could do that could have quite a big impact on our ecological footprint. That's a very inspiring and challenging message to come through. And we're going to actually ask the audience our second question, because we want to know, okay, people have just given a rough estimate of what they think contributes to their ecological footprint. So now what we want to know is, are you already trying to do something about it? Are you already taking steps in your own way, in your own capacity, to reduce your ecological footprint? And we've given you a couple of choices. Yes, every day. Sometimes less than I would like. A few steps, or no, don't know how. So those are the choices we're giving people. So we want to know, are you already trying to do something about this? Are you trying to take steps to reduce your ecological footprint? Now, Serena, we seem to have a lot of very active people who say, yeah, this is part of I try to do this every day.
That's a good sign. I mean, love it.
It's a great sign. Now, let's have a look at the pink column in the middle, because that's less than I would like. And one of the goals we want to do in our conversation today is to both help people understand what's the drive of their ecological footprint and encourage them to say, there's stuff you could do. So here we've got a community of people, yes, who are trying to do it, but they'd like to do more. So what could we tell people? What's the most surprising thing that they could do that might have an impact?
Yes, the point is exactly that, because I mean, how people can change their habits and their action if they do not know what to change and what is causing their impact. So what we like to say at Global Footprint Network is that we cannot manage what we do not measure. And so, you know, we provide a tool, a freely available tool online, which is a personal footprint calculator, which allows each individual to calculate its own footprint. And they also, and the results also return the action that are the most impactful for people. So this is one, of course, one of the tools that is available and that we as Global Footprint Network provide, which can give a first hint, maybe, no, to people, and to try to change their habits, or at least at first to understand and to know, which I think it's essential. The first thing is to know, to be aware.
Absolutely. You've got, we've got, and particularly our audience here clearly want to do something about it, and you've got tools that are available, and we're going to put links onto the website so people will be able to go away and play with these tools and learn more. But let me ask, you know, how much of it should be down to individuals? We already know that from public health research, it's the area I spend a lot of time working on, that there's often a gap between intention, what you want to do, and what you actually end up doing. So surveys show people want to be healthier than they already are. Smokers want to quit. People want to be more active and eat better food than they actually do. But you know, habits and everyday life kind of gets in the way of the intentions. And what we're talking about here with trying to reduce people's ecological footprint is people making deliberate and intentional changes in their lives, what they buy, how they move, what they, you know, where they live, etc. Should it be left to individuals to make these different choices when we're facing such a huge challenge, or should that be coming from you know, from governments or elsewhere?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think there is no a single answer to it, because, you know, it's now proven that human activities are responsible for the ecosystem degradation, biodiversity loss, and ultimately the climate change. And multiple actors actually are responsible for it, from the individuals to the collective up to the institutions. So I think that to reverse the trend, we need profound and persistent transformative change across all actors. But I personally strongly believe in the power of individuals, and I think that each one of us can make the difference with their choices and action. Yet changing behavior, individual behavior, is, I mean, challenging, because it depends on so many factors. But I mean, without entering into the, you know, social behavioral science, first of all, as I also said before, I think that people, I mean, can change if they know what to, if they get to know, first of all, their impact, and so they can get a sense of what their lifestyle are causing, and so they can act. Once they know, maybe they can try to act and change things. So yes, we provide this footprint calculator tool online, and it returns with footprint results, personal footprint results, and also the tool tells you what's your Earth Overshoot Days. So what is Earth Overshoot Day? At global level, the Earth Overshoot Day is the date when humanity's demand on nature resource exceed the Earth capacity to regenerate those resources. So in 2024, this year, the Earth Overshoot Day fell on August 1st. And so it means that we are like consuming the equivalent of 1.8 planet. It means that from August to December, we are depleting our stocks of resources. And so this means over-harvesting, overfishing, and deforesting, and ultimately also accumulating carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But yeah.
Great. I mean, I was just digesting the fact that we're already 2 months past the Earth Overshoot Day for this year. So we're living on a theoretical imaginary second planet that we don't have. We're well past that. I think that's really challenging. You know, the COVID pandemic was also another big global challenge, and it was complex epidemiological information that people had to understand and needed to be communicated in order to prompt behavior change. And we're talking about behavioral change. And one of the ways that was used to communicate it is we used the phrase "flatten the curve," because we showed on television, you know, there's the curve of the disease, and if we can make that flatter, fewer people are going to get sick. And so people understood that to not meet up with other people, not go outside, was your little bit to flatten the curve, because that affected everyone. So, and that increased people's likelihood to comply with the restrictions on behavior, because they understood what piece of their action was in the bigger picture. So maybe we could get this idea of shift the date, you know, the date of the Earth Overshoot Day. Maybe that seems to be something we could get in the front of people's minds, so people are aware every day, you know, if I walk instead of take the car, or if I don't waste the food, that's my bit to help shift that date from August to September to October, so we can aim for the 31st of December is the day when we hit Earth Overshoot Day, because we've used it up, you know, appropriately for the year. What do you think that we should get this concept, shift the date, really firmly in the public consciousness?
Yeah, no, well, I agree. COVID was a big and dramatic challenge for the society. And the thing is that it also hit us quite suddenly and unexpectedly. And so we were kind of forced to react to the situation. While, you know, in the case of the environmental crisis, you know, now we have been analyzing the trend of climate change and environmental degradation for some time now, for some years, and also the consequences are like predicted quite well if we continue on this track of business as usual. So in the case of the environmental crisis, we know what we can expect. And so at Global Footprint Network, we like to say that it's possible to steer the wheel by design and not by disaster. By design means that we see ourselves in the game, we have a play in it, and we can choose to sit in the driving seat and shape the future we want, hopefully a sustainable future for everybody. So, you know, the planet is not changing on its own, and the point is how we do operate on it. And here we have a lot of choices. So at Global Footprint Network, beside this tool of footprint calculator, we also have what we call the Power of Possibilities platform, where we showcase several solutions, several actions that are already in place all over the world and have the potential to reduce the footprint. Actually, for some of them, we have calculated what is the footprint reduction and by how many days that action moved the date. So just to provide few examples, in the case of food, for instance, which is the biggest driver, if we reduce the global meat consumption by 50% and clearly replacing the protein intake with a vegetarian diet, we would move the date by 17 days. And you mentioned the food waste before. If we cut the food waste in half at global level, we would move the day by 13 days. Or the mobility, if we choose not to drive by car by 50% around the world and instead moving by walking or biking or using public transportation, we would move the day by 13 days again. And well, the carbon components, clearly carbon emissions are the biggest share of footprint at global level. So if we cut the carbon emission by 50, we would be able to move the date by 93 days, which means 3 months, which I think would be great. I mean, so, and maybe, you may think 13 days are not that much, but if you add up all the solution, and we can get a great result.
Yep, thank you. You've given us some real suggestions there about what collective momentum from individual actions could actually shift that date. Let's check in with our audience one more time before we close this activity. We're going to create a word cloud, and the question we're asking you is, now that you have more information, now that we've explained those concepts particularly, what will you do differently? Now, remember when we asked the audience, are you already trying to do something? A lot of people came back and said, yes, every day. But it was that pink block in the middle where we said, people said, I'd like to do more. We're giving you some suggestions, and you've highlighted there, it's to do with the way we move. So if we use the car less, we use public transport more, changing our diets, wasting food less, so menu planning and all those really simple things. There are things that people could do, which if we do enough of it, enough people take that action, it will start to shift the date. And we had August, and we need to get from August to December. So we've got, 3.5 months we got to collect. So thank you. We're starting to get some suggestions in here. And Serena, I think they're probably very much inspired by the information that you've given people, because people are saying if food was the largest single constituents of people's ecological footprints, that seems to be the message people are coming up with. They want to shop differently, they want to go vegetarian, they want to waste less, and all of these things you've set out, they are good pathways for us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and what I can, and again, every single step, every single choices can make the difference, even though we maybe don't see the immediate consequences of our change. I think they make the difference, and they are all important. And yeah, and what I can also suggest is to be aware, first of all, get informed on this issue, and share the information and the concerns, maybe even with your relatives, with your family, with your friends. Speak about this topic, and and get informed. And you can, I invite you all to explore the resources that we have online, including this personal footprint calculator that we have, the Power of Possibilities platform that we provide. And we also have a map where we geolocalize the various solutions. So one may be willing to go and see what is happening in his or her area around them, and so maybe they can be inspired to follow the same action and solution, or they maybe even want to join some of the solutions that are shared. And last but not least, since we are in the field of education here, I really highlight the role that education has to transfer the knowledge on sustainable development and on sustainability. And also, Global Footprint Network had participated in an Erasmus Plus project called eustep.eu, in which we have developed innovative and interactive teaching and learning modules that you can find online, and they are all available. And we provide really methods and tools to engage the students and to captivate them in this field of sustainability.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Serena, for joining us today and for both inspiring us to take action and also giving us actual concrete ideas about what we could do. And I love these ideas that you've got, you know, which is the power of possibilities, the platform of possibilities, and that you can act through determination rather than through disaster. And again, I think these are really empowering messages that we can give people. When you're faced with this huge challenge of climate change and global warming, it's really easy for people to feel overwhelmed and say, there's only little me and there's this big problem, there's nothing I can do. And you're actually setting out how, if millions of people take small steps, then we move, we shift the date, and it's possible. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. And we'll put all those resources online. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. And now Paolo was drawing in the background, so I'm sure he's created a fantastic image for this session, and we'll be sharing that with you at the end of the day when you'll see all of the visuals that he created for all of the sessions. Now let's move to our next section where we're going to do an EPALE talks, and we're looking at how to design sustainable futures through adult learning. Remember our first speaker, Christopher, talked about, you know, a need for, we can imagine new things, and everything is possible in the imagination, and we need this new concept of a sort of new negotiation, new shared possibilities. So our next speakers are going to help us tell us more about some of the work they're doing. So let me bring on to my panel. I have Ezra Telly, who is a professor at the Erzincan Binali Yildirim University, and her research focuses on cognitive processes in learning, trends in educational technologies, the use of technology in adult education, and she has also been the Eastern Anatolian Regional Ambassador at EPALE Turkey since 2019. Welcome, Ezra. I'm also going to bring on Chrysanthi Karatsari, who is a postdoctorate researcher for the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and her research revolves around adult and agricultural education and training, motivation towards participating in such training, digitalization, and the twin transition. So welcome. I'd like to also bring on Christelle Guilebert, who is a freelance journalist who specializes in climate change, environment, and technology. And it's Khema Denigo, an education expert from the European Commission in the Education for Climate Coalition team at the Joint Research Centre. And his aim is to help bring sustainability into teaching and learning and to adapt the education systems for the green transition. So welcome to all of you. We've got a great panel, and we want to sort of see how we can take some of the principles we've just heard about and the concepts and put them into practical education tools. So Chema, I'm going to start with you. You focus on greening education systems, and you're part of a community of practice that brings together stakeholders to promote green competencies. So what do we mean by green competencies?
Hello, everyone. You can hear me? It works?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So thank you for the question. I think it's a very important question. We got to know what we mean by green competences. So the good news is that we have now a tool that helps us greatly in defining what are the green competences. But maybe let me recap a bit how we came to that conclusion that we needed such a competence framework. It's called the European Sustainability Competence Framework, or short Green Comp, which is a very handy tool. As a matter of fact, when the Green Deal was proposed by the European Commission back in 2019, there was we came to the conclusion that we needed to have something that could help us define better the green competences. If you want to have a bit of context, institutional context, that's the most important by far. A year after, there was the European Skills Agenda, and then also the European Education Area. This is the frame, if you want, that for the Green Com, the European Sustainability Competence Framework. So how did it work really? Because then we, the European Commission, started working on it. And at the very beginning, we did a literature review, my colleagues in the Joint Research Center, to understand a bit. So, okay, green skills. We see green skills everywhere, you know, Tamsin, in all the documents for years, green skills here, green skills there. What are we talking about really? And the very interesting study that was done by that researcher prior to the definition of the green comp was to clearly identify the fact that we didn't know what we were talking about really. There were a lot of definition proposed on there, but there was not a common understanding about what really green competences entail. And if we don't have that, it will be a big problem because we definitely need such a common definition, such a common understanding in order to promote learning on environmental sustainability in the European Union. So from there, the work began. And now we have the Green Comp that has been published 2.5 years ago. So it's something which is kind of new anyway. And we have a lot of people around that are coming to implement solutions using Green Comp. So let me start from the working definitions that were considered by the researcher to define green competences. There was one definition on sustainability, on one definition on sustainability competences that are supposed to empower learners. I'm reading now. To embody sustainability values and embrace complex systems in order to take or recreate action that restores and maintains ecosystem health and enhances justice, generating vision for a sustainable future. How? That's the definition. So they came up with a competence framework, which is composed of 12 competences, right? And these 12 competences are organized around 4 main competence areas. So to make it short, because I don't have time enough to go into the detail of a green comp, you've got one which is about complexity in sustainability, if you want, one which is tackling values, one which is tackling something super important, action linked to sustainability, and one which is linked to culture literacy. So these competences, that list of competences, you will find some competences that you will find under other competence framework, for instance, critical thinking, but you will find others that are really very particular, such as systems thinking, which is, to my view, something which is absolutely key, for instance. Even if there is not a proper order, the interesting things with the green comp is that you've got to understand if you're a teacher, if you're an adult and you want to learn and develop any sort of activities, for instance, frame with that green comp, you have to consider the full set, of course, Tamsin, of competences in order to say, okay, here now I'm trying to promote really green competences. So I will finish by telling you that, in fact, there are reasons to rejoice and also reason not to despair, because we don't have to despair, but certainly to keep acting, because that's very nice. We now have a tool, but does it work really? And what's the level of adoption? Because if no, we won't get there. So the thing we did also a review that was a very interesting one that was called Learning from Practice, a compendium of case studies on green comp. So 12 case studies were considered, and the researchers who did that study came up with the conclusion that it works. We see very interesting implementation cases. I give you one, for instance, I'm French. The Education French Ministry came up with its own definition of green competences on based their definition on green comp. That's an example at a full education system, for instance. But we still keep to strengthen our dissemination efforts. Might seem so obvious what I'm saying, but it's super important. I keep, of course, meeting a lot of people in my daily work. Most of the people I meet, even if they are involved in sustainability actions and activities, they don't know what green comp is. So we still and when as soon as they learn about it, they say, "Great, that's a wonderful tool. Let's use it." So, but that's the first thing. Second thing is, I give you another figure so that I can illustrate a bit my reason not to rejoice but to keep acting. There was another study, another compendium of inspiring practices that was done in the frame of the European Year of Skills by my colleagues from another directorate. It was in June 2023, so it's not that old. Done by the working group on the vocational education training on the green transition. So these guys are working together, and they did that study, and they also made a questionnaire for all these people who are representing the various member states, etc. And we had 22 people there, and out of these 22, 8 of them answers that saying that there was no understanding of what green skills were in their countries. 8. And 6, but there was a national definition of green skills in the process. So 14 out of 22. I think that's interesting. It tells us very clearly that we still have a lot of work to do. We've got to maintain our efforts. So I will invite you, and finish by invite you, of course, to join the GreenCom community, which is hosted by the Education for Climate Coalition. So basically a big community of practice of people like you, interested in green education, but also educators, practitioners, and also, of course, students. And this community help us also share our views to understand how we can better localize, adapt, use GreenComp, for instance, and in order, of course, to promote activities that will strengthen the green competences. I think it's a must. The GreenComp is translated into 24 official languages. So I would say help yourself, use it.
Okay.
It's a wonderful tool.
That's great. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure the links to that are shared on the different platforms that we're broadcasting on, so that people are able to follow up with that and accept your invitation to join the community of practice. Chrysanthi, let me bring you in now, because your interest is how education can transform the ability of learners to take on board the sustainability values. Can you tell us a bit about this, and you've got any examples you can share?
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you, Tamsin, for this stimulating question. Yeah. Adult education helps individuals interrogate their perspectives by critically reflecting upon their beliefs and perceptions, and changing problematic frames of reference. In other words, adult education can help learners alter their worldviews. Adult education is much more than teaching adults a specific subject, like the impact of climate change on society. Adult education is about supporting learners in understanding their position within physical and social environments, and criticizing the context within which they live and work. A great adult education program leads learners to rethink their positions and roles within this context. They understand life and become sustainability thinkers through changing their value systems. So values can be case specific, like endorsing the importance of using public transportation instead of my car to reduce my carbon footprint, or endorsing the significance of buying food products from small-scale farms to support their social sustainability. They can also be, and this is more important, universal. For instance, sacrificing personal desires and some comforts to help the natural environment, or making decisions based on their costs and benefits for the biosphere when talking about environmental sustainability, or supporting people or communities in need when focusing on social sustainability. So, adult education can boost value reorientation by acting at the intellectual and emotional level. The intellectual refers to the ability to understand the significance of a behavior. On the other hand, values create emotional responses. A good educational program causes adults' emotional reactions toward people, animals, and the natural environment. That can generate empathetic responses, a kind of sustainability empathy, and care about environmental health and social well-being. When people have such empathetic reactions, they are ready to go the extra mile by developing responsibility toward being more sustainable. So we can say that values are motivational forces that urge people to take action. If, for example, I value the importance of recycling, I may develop more or less specific goals, like reducing my environmental footprint through recycling, and take pro-sustainability action, like throwing plastic bottles in the proper trash bin, or even stopping buying plastic bottles. To sum up, the path from values to action involves developing awareness. For example, understanding that some products and materials have a high carbon footprint. Then reshaping values and also the importance of responsible consumption. And after that, taking action by, for instance, buying organics or fair trade products. So a critical question here is, can adult education programs lead to value reorientation? Although I'm sure that adult education providers have the best intentions, traditional programs that emphasize the linear knowledge transfer from teacher to learner cannot fully address weak issues related to sustainability. There are some great examples of projects that promote collaborative knowledge co-creation and value building through hands-on experimentation in multi-environmental contexts, like social labs, living labs, or challenge labs. All these approaches share a common characteristic: the exchange of knowledge and values among heterogeneous actors, such as adult education providers and the industry, universities, societal actors, governmental and EU-level organizations, and of course, citizens. That was my point of view, and you're welcome.
Thank you, because you were really helpful to, you said you start by connecting to people's values, and then you use that to develop empathy and understanding. And I think that links really nicely back to our first keynote speaker this morning, Christopas, who invited us, to use our imagination and to think about a negotiation between ourselves as human beings and the planet. So it starts with that sort of empathy and that understanding, in order to have a point where you end up in individual actions. And that was what we just discussed in the previous session, which was, what is it that you as an individual can do differently so that you are part of the change movements? That was really lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ezra, that's bringing in a bit more of a challenging issue, because you focus on developing digital and sustainability mindsets. Can you explain to us what that means? What are these? Is that a single mindset or two mindsets? Because there can be tensions between the two. For the digital transition, we're going to be using a lot more gadgets, a lot more energy. All those gadgets are embodied carbon extracted with materials. So the requirements of the digital transition and the need to reduce our carbon footprint can sometimes feel contradictory. How do you address this?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? No problem.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. When I refer to developing a digital and sustainability mindset, I mean cultivating an awareness in individuals and organizers that embraces the opportunities brought by digital transformation, while being mindful of the environmental impact of these technologies, these digital technologies. This mindset ensures that we use technology not only to enhance efficiency, but also to generate eco-friendly solutions. It emphasizes conscious decision-making, encourage use to think beyond immediate gains to align our digital actions with sustainable practices. Yes, you are true. There can be a tension between the requirements of digitalizations and the need to reduce our carbon footprint, carbon emissions. Technologies like data centers, cloud computing, other like smart infrastructure consume energy, and if not managed properly, they can increase emissions. However, this tension can be managed effectively through some strategies. If you want, I can outline a few key points about this. Firstly, I think using energy efficient technologies is more important. One of the first way to tackle this challenge is by focusing on energy efficient technologies. For example, companies are now designing data centers that operate using renewable energy, reducing their carbon emissions. Artificial intelligence algorithms and Internet of things-based systems can monitor energy consumption and optimize it in real time, whether it's in smart homes, office buildings, or factories, etc. Using this technologies responsibly ensures that digital transformation supports sustainability goals. The first way is this, using energy efficient technologies. The second, I can say, promoting sustainability through digital tools. Digitalization itself can unlock new ways to conserve resource. Take digital twins as an example. These virtual models allow companies to test products and systems digitally before manufacturing, eliminating the need for multiple psychological prototypes. Similarly, remote work and online education have drastically reduced commuting and business travel, leading to lower carbon emissions. By integrating such digital practices, we create more sustainable ways of living and working. I can say the third one is thinking long term, not short term. We have to think long term. So although some technologies may seem to increase energy consumption in the short term, the long term benefits of outweigh these costs. For example, shifting to online learning reduced the use of printed materials and energy-intensive classroom spaces. Likewise, especially artificial intelligence-driven supply chains and automated systems can make production processes more efficient, results in long-term source savings. Adopting a long-term mindset ensures that digital tools become enablers of sustainability rather than obstacles. And especially this concept, EPALE concept, I want to mention the role of adult education in building these mindsets. Adult education plays a critical role in promoting both digital and sustainable thinking. Through target learning programs, educators can empower professionals to adopt environmentally responsible digital tools in their industries, in their workplaces. Adult learners, especially those already in the workforce, are essential for leading the green transition. They have the potential to apply sustainable practices in their daily work and drive innovation through eco-conscious. This is very important, eco-conscious use of technology. Adult education, therefore, serves a bridge connecting today's workplace with the demands of green economy that relies on both innovation and sustainability. To conclude, balancing the digital transformation with sustainability requires thoughtful, conscious design about the technology we use, how we use them. It also requires regular evaluations of their environmental impact. Educational institutions have a significant role in fostering these mindsets, preparing students and professionals to bridge both digitalization and sustainability as complementary, not contradictory goals. With the right mindset, digital tools can become powerful allies in building as a sustainable future, I think.
Thank you, Ezra. And again, really interesting how you said that actually adult learners are key, because they can very quickly get some of these new skills, new sort of green approaches implemented, because many of them are in or go back into the workplace and are in a position to make some of these changes quickly. So that was great. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. I'm about to open the floor in a few minutes to questions from the audience. So keep your questions coming in. We've had lots of likes, so I know that you're interested in what we're saying, but in a few moments, I'll be opening the floor. But first, let me come to you, Christelle, because we've been talking about values in some of our other speakers and sustainability mindsets. As a journalist, you often have to set out the bigger picture to provide the context. How should the climate and environment, how do we need to understand that from a broader perspective? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy to be here and share this panel with my colleagues. To see the climate and environment in a broader perspective, I think maybe before skills and mindset, it's a strong cultural and physical vision, which involves a fundamental change in our relationship to our living condition and resources, biosphere, water, climate, but also human communities living on the earth, and all the elements that shape our possible way of lives on earth, and which should pay attention to, especially in Western white modern societies where this knowledge has been neglected and are not considered anymore as something that enables us to live together on a daily basis. So I think understand what those living conditions and resources are and how does the world in which we live work should be considered as a fundamental knowledge, as essential as knowing how to read, how to write, or how to count. It means that who and what is living with us, how they live, how can we live together individually and collectively, and within that, what does enable us to eat, to have a house, to wear clothes, to move from a place to another. So these are concrete and material things we need to be aware of to understand ecologically the world in which we are living. And also, we have to keep in mind that ecological crisis is not only about descriptive figures, scientific statistics, or graphics. It's also about how people and places where they live are affected. And we need to grasp the scale of the problem and explore its consequences on different scales, like locally, nationally, and internationally. And this raises enormous number of scientific, cultural, and political questions. And it also intersects with issues of social issues, of social, feminist, and decolonial, justice. So we have to ask ourselves to how we can rebuild a system that provides a dignified and healthy standard of living for everyone. So it's a strong cultural, philosophical, but also political question. So this is my perspective as a journalist, so how we can educate people to environmental and climate issues from a political way. Because this cultural and philosophical vision of ecology and environment needs to be translated into political acts. So, yeah. And maybe one more thing, because Occidental civilization in its technical, political, and economical organization made a kind of separation between us and environment, and this distances us from dramatic situation that is harmful to both human being and the environment. So educating yourself, I'm not a specialist of adult learning, but educating yourself in a general way to these things, to see things more clearly and to become aware of the seriousness of the situation, while at the same thing being able to see the way in which we can change it, both individually and collectively. So for me, and training is essential to understand that, but not only in a scholar or academic way, but also every day with information, with media, and with, of course, adult learning and all kind of trainings or program training that can be given to you to understand all the extent of the problem of climate and environment crisis.
Great. Thank you very much. And we've already had one question in that I'd like to put to the panel. It came in through the EPALE platform, and to the audience, please keep your questions coming. That's great. This question says, how do digital and sustainability mindsets intersect with issues of social justice and equity in educational contexts? Now, we just heard from Christelle, you raised some of this, equity, social justice, balancing issues, that not everyone is equally responsible for the economic system that we're in. Not everyone equally suffers the impact of some of these things. So there's really important issues we should take into account. So panel, we're asked, on the one hand, we've got, teaching digital and sustainability mindsets. On the other hand, we've got this broader analysis of social justice, and equality. How do we bring those elements together in adult learning contexts? It's a tough one. Who wants to respond to that? Trima, will we find an answer in your communities of practice?
It's an interesting question, but I will repeat myself. I'm sorry, because you remember that I told you that Green Comp precisely was divided in areas of competence. There was, which is one in particular, which is dealing with values, and it's absolutely key, really. So if I dive into the detail of these three competences of that area of competence around value, you've got valuing sustainability, that makes sense. Promoting nature makes also full sense, and there's a lot to do there. And supporting fairness. So it's obvious that it's one of the values of the Green Comp, and it's absolutely sure. But equity, if you want, and social justice is a dimension that has got to be tackled when you're learning and trying to promote your sustainability competences. So how you do that in adult learning, it's another story. It's a complex story, I should say. But exactly, I believe that because you were inviting to join the community, I believe we need a participatory approach there. We need to find new ways, certainly, of doing things together. And also of approaching the very notion of sustainability. We had a discussion together before, prior to that conference, apparently you are very much interested in systems thinking. That's a very important one, because justice is part of that big game. It's about really complexity, and systems thinking, to my view, it's absolutely key. So what we want to promote for adults, but it's the same for young people. And I think we should stop having these limitations on borders that are very strict between different and various education sectors, because at the end of the day, we all have to learn, be it adults and students, for sure. So if we want to focus on that very notion of the systems thinking, I think it's the start in a way. Because if you want to promote some particular actions, competences for your adults to become citizens and professionals that need to act against climate change, which won't happen in the future, it's happening right now, so we've got no time for it. You need first to have a system-informed action capacity, I should say. So the start should be certainly to start from that knowledge and to understand really how you have to have an overview of the complexity of the problem we're facing, where justice certainly is important, for instance, as much as biology and the reality of biodiversity. So this is something we've got to understand. And for that, we need to learn. We need to learn.
Yes.
Please go ahead, Christophe.
During a long time, we had the habit to treat environmental and climate crisis separately from social crisis and people issues. And I think that now, when we think about program training about environmental crisis or climate and climate change, we need to constantly articulate it to social issue, and as I was saying, telling before, like how it affects people and places where and places where they live. So it's not about the loss of biodiversity and living condition on one hand, and people and how they live on the other hand. These are both issues are extremely linked together.
Exactly.
And when we are teaching in training programs, we need to articulate them permanently, so that it's not a separate problem in people's mind, but a complex problem, one complex problem we need to treat all together.
Thank you. I think, yes, please go ahead, Chrysanthi. Oh, and Hezzy, all of you want to come in on this top issue. Chrysanthi, go first.
Thank you very much. I think that, yeah, it's very interesting, both Christelle and Tremer, that their points of view. Yes, I totally agree with this. And I think that we'll need a shift in philosophy from teaching adults how to do things to help them understand their dependence among social subsystems. We have recently developed the concept of socially responsible learning to describe design philosophy for adult education and training that emphasizes the potential externalities of learning for society. For example, let's imagine an educational program entitled Learning to Hunt. The program may be successful and the learning outcomes may be achieved. However, killing wild animals is not a socially responsible behavior. The example is extreme, yeah, I know. But overusing electronic devices, for example, is also socially responsible since they consume energy, all these devices, while there is always a possibility of using these technologies irresponsibly. If an educational program focuses on using ICTs, which is a usual subject for educational programs, it should include topics related to the negative impacts of ICTs. Learners must understand that using ICTs may that using ICTs may have negative impacts, societal impacts, environmental impacts. Because to produce ICTs, we need to consume high quantities of energy. So we need to add social responsibility thinking into the design of adult educational programs. That's my thought.
Thank you. So socially responsible is an additional value that we need to build into it. Esri.
Yeah. I think the intersection of digital sustainable mindset and social justice issues in adult learning addresses inequalities by promoting equal access to education and fostering lifelong learning also. Marginalized communities often face a digital divide, lacking access to necessary technology for online learning, which exacerbates educational and economic disparities, maybe. A sustainable digital mindset emphasizes ensuring all adults have access to affordable or open source educational tools. Additionally, inclusive curricula and culturally responsive content ensure diverse learners are represented, promoting critical thinking about social justice issues. Lack of digital literacy skills can prevent adults from advancing in the modern workplace, and sustainable approach involves providing training to empower adults from disadvantaged backgrounds. Affordable lifelong learning resources such as free online courses, further democratized education, enable individuals from all socioeconomic backgrounds to learn and grow over them. Moreover, I think sustainable digital platform must prioritize accessibility and multilingual support to overcome barriers faced by adults with disabilities or those who are non-native speakers, etc. Lastly, I can say fostering critical thinking through social justice education enables adult learners to challenge systematic inequities and advocate for their communities, contribute to a more equitable society. And I want to mention the role of EPALE in this position. I think platforms like EPALE become incredibly important in that point.
Thank you. We've had a question from Dora. She's put it on the website, and she says, I think European adults already have an idea that they have to change their behavior to save the planet, but the system we live in makes change difficult. For example, decades ago, everyone cooked at home, but the new generations only buy processed food. They don't know how to cook, and more because they've never had time to learn. So how can adult education help to shift the system when the inertia of the system is so heavily, pushing people into other habits? So this is, what's the role of education, adult education? How useful is it when it's pushing back against a big, heavy system, an economic system, a political system that pushes people in a certain way? Maybe Christelle, we'd start with you because you I think as a journalist, you've got quite a critical viewpoint in this. How do we make sure that we don't disempower people by essentially blaming them for not taking action when the system is designed to be most efficient if they do the same behaviors? We can't hear you. That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I will say that adult learning can't do. We can. How can I say that? Well, it's not adult learning which are going to save us and to change all the system in which we lived 4 centuries ago. Like now, the system in the loss of living condition that we are suffering, like right now, everywhere on the planet, is due to a political and economical system developed by Occidental countries, like several centuries ago, with the start of colonialism and then the Industrial Revolution. So this is a profound economic and political system that we need to change. And I think that maybe the role of adult learning is to make us aware of the historical roots of this system, which is harmful to both planets and human beings. But then it's not how can I say?
It's not a silver bullet.
It's not about skills and competencies and knowledge. It's a question of it's a political issue and question. So maybe, and this is our role as a citizen, to do something by mobilizations, by petitions, by all the action we can have in our hands to try to make pressure on our political leaders or industrial leaders. But this is not something, it's not the role of adult learning, I think, to push us to have mobilizations and to try to fight for another system, to fight for another political system. So maybe, yes, this is what I can answer to this question.
Great, thank you. No, I think you were, because in the EPALE community, we think adult education is great and we think it can change the world, but we also have to recognize that it's not there to fix the world. It's there, and on this panel we've spoken about the importance of values, helping people connect their values, giving them the information they need to understand and analyze the world around them, and that gives them the power to make changes in their own life, to hold others to account, to communicate that and affect change. So you've given us a lovely theory of change. That's wonderful. Thank you. And we believe that adult education is the magic sauce that makes that theory of change happen. Who else would like to and we're coming towards the end of our time together. So what is the final message that you'd like to share with us in this area of, how adult education can sensitize people to green ideas, help them link to their values and find actions? So Tremer, shall I start with you and then we'll do a final wrap of the panel?
Well, we try to be very short. I think to bounce on the very question which was being asked, I think we need to have a lifelong learning approach. And adult learning is part of the solution. And the question was interesting because it was also about the fact that we've got different generations, and sometimes, too often, to my view, we tend to have a confrontal view of each generation when in fact we need to work together. So adult learning combined also with other generations, younger, could be a very interesting a solution where people of different ages could work together on solutions. Because, and that's my final message, that's something I'm really going to state the obvious here. But we're talking about sustainability, which is by definition something which is fully transversal. So it's transversal in terms of generation, as I was saying before. But when it comes to education, it's transversal also between the disciplines, but also between the different education sectors. So, and the complexity of the solution, of course, but if we still have a vision, a view on sustainability, which is to compartmentalize, to have different blocks that are one separated from the other, we won't get there. We really need to work fully. So transdisciplinarity is absolutely key, for instance, and transversality in all kind of sectors.
Thank you. Crescenti, what final message would you like to make for this panel?
Yes, adult learning can spark a sequence of positive outcomes. And when we are talking about, for example, climate change, understanding climate change, developing values, cultivating empathy, and taking action, these are the four steps. For example, it can definitely, adult learning can definitely create climate conscious citizens. And what we must have in mind is that it's a systemic process involving different components, and these subsystems form networks that are interrelated, interconnected, interdependent, and we all need systems thinking skills to deal with this multidimensionality and make sense of interdependence between different components. So it's difficult to develop these systems thinking skills, and adult learning and adult education can help to this direction. And one last issue, in order to bring all the disciplines together, we must foster collaboration between different actors and institutions. In the European Union, several initiatives promote cooperation between academia, industry, and adult education. One of them is the Alliance for Innovation, which is one of the 25 actions included in the new European innovation agenda, and receive support from Erasmus Plus program. So adult learning and adult education is a part of this very important, very crucial initiative to help citizens become aware and change their values, their frames of reference, and take action and do things and be energetic citizens and understand what's happening in their context, in their environment.
Thank you. Esri, do you have a brief final message you'd like to leave with us?
Yes, okay. Adult learning plays a critical role in addressing climate change, of course, by equipping individuals with the knowledge and skills they need to understand. As climate change requires immediate and long-term solutions. Firstly, adult learning programs can focus on upskilling and reskilling workers in sectors like renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable agriculture, helping industries transition towards green practices. Secondly, I think adult education is key in promoting lifelong learning, which is essential as the nature of work evolves the green transition. Through workshops, online courses, and vocational training, adult learners can stay updated on the latest development about the green technologies. And last, adult learning, I think, helps create climate conscious citizens by raising awareness about the impacts of climate change and empowering individuals to take action. This might include community-based learning initiatives or professional development programs that focus on sustainability, climate adaptation, and resilience strategies. In a sense, I think adult education provides both the practical skill and the mindset shift needed to address climate change, making it a cornerstone of global effort to create a more sustainable future.
Excellent, thank you. Christelle, is there one or two sentences you'd like us to leave with?
Yes, maybe I strongly recommend to follow adult learning's program about sustainability, climate change, ecological crisis, because I think it's essential key to understand the world where we live and the seriousness of the problem. It was essential for me when I start my career in journalism, because I followed a master's degree to be trained on all these complex issues. And I think it's essential to have the keys to understand the information, because there are so much information in press media, in everything. So maybe when you don't have any keys to filter this information, it's maybe difficult to plunge and to really understand everything what is going on and everything which happened. But then, if you want to go further, as we said before, adult learning, sorry, can do anything and can do everything. So don't hesitate to educate yourself to political action, to connect with people, to connect with charities, to connect with all the actors, all the players which are trying to fight to another world more sustainable and more fair.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for this. So a warm thank you to Trema, to Esri, to Kosanti, and to Christelle for sharing with us your insights on this. So thank you very much. And I will close the panel there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're coming towards our last session together, and my task is to try and sum up 3 amazing days. So I won't be able to do justice to everything that we've been discussing, but just let me share a few highlights, and I'm sure you have your own highlights to share. We know that over the last few days, your comments, your emojis, and the other feedback you've given us online tell us how much you've appreciated the quality of the conversation. We've shared lots of links with you, which you hope you will go and follow them and find out more. You can download resource materials and tools that have been mentioned by the speakers. We want to give that to you, as well as the recordings from the 3 days, so you can use it, you can share it, you can watch it again, so that the conversation continues. And it was great to hear from so many of the NSSs, the National Support Services, the different events they were holding to build on the same conversations and take it further. So thank you very much. If I could wind back time, and I'm talking about time deliberately because that's what we talked about, to day 1, where we addressed different aspects of digital and technology. We talked about ethics, we talked about rules and quality. We heard about how digital skills training can be a bridge to ending socialized isolation, the power to address gender equity, and how to connect rural or remote communities to bring them in closer and remake those social connections that may have been lost. We also heard about, and we reconnected with the radical and emancipatory history of adult learning, that it has always been a pathway to challenge structural inequalities, to empower people to take political action, to have voting power, to have more control and options over their own lives. But we also ended on this idea that technology has always confronted us, whether it was the printing press, the radio, the television, and more recently it's AI. We should not allow it to determine our future. So no technological determination. We still have power to make choices, to set guardrails, and to create an appropriate place for technology in our lives. So that was our first day. Great conversations. Yesterday, we explored the nature of time and how to create protected spaces of deceleration where there is room for reflection on the past and imagination for the future. So to help people get out of the tyranny of the present, where there's deadlines crashing on them all the time, to create space and that freedom. We also talked about creativity and how creativity is innate, is in each of us. It often gets lost through the formal education system or through life circumstances, but it can be reawoken. And we heard about the concept of citizen artists who, through their lived experience, are able to contribute and take space in the artistic world and have something to contribute, and that artists are interested and find their own life and work and practice enriched by engaging with citizen artists. We also heard that, just asking simple questions and listening and accompanying people can trigger profound insights and sharing. Meeting people in their realities and affirming their personhood. It also gives them freedom to express who they are and process their life experiences, sometimes deeply traumatic, and how creativity and education offer that to people. So that was my brief summary of the last 2 days. I know for many of you, it was a very emotional experience. We had messages talking about how you were deeply touched by some of the conversations. I haven't written any notes about today because we've just lived it, but I don't need notes because I have the fantastic images and graphics that were created by Paolo. So let's now watch. He's created some lovely images to show. This was our first session looking with Christopas. And thank you, by the way, more questions arrived for him that were too late for us to use, but we will send them to him because we know he's doing another event for the NSS Lithuania. But he there talked about the power of education and how we need to not separate the individual from the environment. We're all connected, and that way you can have a sense of a negotiation. What does the environment need? What do we need? And how do we find a way forward? And this gives us a more holistic approach so that we can bring these things together. So there we go. It's a fantastic image. It'll be on the EPALE websites. This was the second image, and we had an interactive session to help people understand not just the carbon footprint, but the ecological footprint. And that everything we do has a demand for land, the use of land. And it's that that's so limited on the one planet that we have. So we need to think from an ecological point of view, all of the different things, the land uses. And we look to see, we ask people, what do you think are the biggest parts of your contribution to your ecological footprint? And it was interesting that it's food and transport are the top two. And those are things where we can make different choices. And by doing that, collectively, we can shift the date. And we introduced this idea of shifting the date. Currently, our Earth overshoot day is in August. So we've used up the planet already. If we can shift that date backwards towards September, October, November, we are doing everything we can as individuals, and collectively, all those little actions add up. So that was a great, hopefully empowering session. And we've just had our final session, which was an EPALE talks where we look to see how do we turn these ideas, these values into practice for adult education. We talked about, what do we mean by green competences? It means everything and nothing. We need to be very clear what's in it. It's about the values, it's systems thinking, it's complexity, it's intersectionality. How do we put all of that into a framework that gives us the new mindsets for the digital and the green transition? That they don't have to be mutually opposed. There are ways of making sure that as we go through the digital transition, we've integrated into it elements around sustainability, making sure we prioritize energy efficiency, making sure we prioritize low use of minerals and natural resources. So we had this whole approach. Also, we were reminded that this takes place in a context of power dynamics, historical injustice, social injustices, and we need to address that and acknowledge that in the lens through which we see sustainability. So thank you, Paolo, for sharing these wonderful drawings that you've done, because they really give us an aide-memoire, a way to remember all of this. It's been, I hope you would agree, and thank you, Paolo, for doing that and sharing that. You've shown us how a visual facilitator can make something, take a very rich conversation and turn it into digestible and memorable. So thank you, Paolo, and I'm sure you will all, the audience, agree it made a real difference to today's conversation. Thank you. So I've tried to sum up some of the amazing things we've talked about, but now I would like to pass the floor to officially close us on behalf of the European Commission to Ulrika Storost. She is the head of sector for online education platforms for the European Commission at the DG for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. Ulrika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tamsin. Thank you for this excellent wrap up of this really, truly, I would say, uplifting conference. And first, I want to, of course, really greet this community. And I learned it's a community of EPALE. And actually, we coined this new acronym. It's enthusiastic people that basically run a community that is accessible with liberty and energy. So EPALE, and I really think I'm going to use this more often because it kind of reflects what I've seen throughout these 3 days of the conference. And you just said it, Tamsin, there were amazing conversations about freedom of expression, social connections through technology, time, respect, creativity, the power of imagination as well, narratives, emotions, and really these small steps for a better future. So the list could go on, but I really think just this reflecting on this list of topics, it shows that it was not only a conference about how we organize or approach adult learning, but it was really a moment to decelerate and to reflect about the essence actually of humanity and how adult learning enables us to live to the fullest of our potential as humans. So very emotional, as you said already. Before we conclude, I would like to highlight 3 key takeaways that really stand out from our time together. And I think these takeaways, they also offer us some orientation for moving forward. This is as you can see here, the overall motto, and we really lived up to this. And I hope this inspires our future collaboration in this community of European adult educators. So the first takeaway is upskilling and reskilling for the digital transition. This is really no longer an option. It's kind of an imperative. We really saw examples, and the event itself underscored the urgency to embrace lifelong learning, to adapt and to lead the way, not only to react, but really to lead the way in this rapidly changing societies and job markets where the demand for skills is actually for new skills is skyrocketing. So let's commit to empowering adult learners with the skills needed to navigate in this digital transition. The European Commission will for sure also do its share in this way. So the incoming Commission actually will build up a union of skills, which is comprehensive strategy focused on investment, on adult education and lifelong learning. It will also enhance vocational, educational and training and help individuals to maintain and upgrade their skills. So as part of this effort, we will also simplify the recognition and understanding of different skills across the entire EU. The European education area is something that will foster a common approach to skills development, learning mobility, quality, and the inclusiveness of education. And we will actually strengthen Erasmus+, which is this wonderful tool that we have at our disposal and that also provided the funding for this very conference. As a second main takeaway, we saw that adult learning can be a way out of poverty, and it's actually a very powerful catalyst for breaking the cycle of marginalization. It's offering individuals the skills and the knowledge that actually they need to transform their lives, and by investing in adult education, we can actually help them to provide a pathway for personal and economic growth. So not just to manage their everyday lives, but really to thrive. Again, to the best of the possibility of humans, as we really heard throughout this conference in all 3 days. We actually saw very inspiring stories of those who have used learning as a stepping stone to success, for example, out of prisons. There were examples of this. I also heard actually very important and touching reflections on the limits of adult learning programs and actually how those can also be overcome by working in multi-professional teams and connecting to the community. So let's commit to really support adult learners, not just when we invest in adult education, we invest in individual people, but we invest actually in a positive vision for the society, for all of us, for the EU as a whole as well. Again, coming up here, this idea of positive narratives that we also heard this morning. As part of the European Pillar of Social Rights, the incoming European Commission will be working on the first ever EU strategy against poverty. So the idea here is to help people to get the basic protections and services that they need and tackle the main reasons behind poverty. And for sure, adult education will play a part and an important role in this strategy. Coming to the third takeaway, adult learning for sustainable development, which was the core of the conversations today. So it's really not about only acquiring knowledge, it's about transforming ourselves, our communities, and our planet. So basically, when we embrace sustainability in every aspect of our lives, we actually hold the power of changing our societies. And that is a very empowering thought in itself, that we can actually take very small steps. We can contribute to a more sustainable and equitable world for future generations. And I very much liked yesterday one of the speakers referring to this cultural concept of the 7th generation in the future, using the resources today so that they are still sufficient for the next 7 generations, where we actually can link the topic from yesterday, the topic of time, notion of time, with the topic of today. Adult education and the green transitions are really closely interlinked. Achieving the European deal depends on people. So people that understand the sustainability challenges that we have and that can actually proactively shape and adapt their behaviors. And we have heard just in the panel that there are many European tools and policies that adult educators can actually rely upon in their work, which is the Council recommendation on learning for the green transition and sustainable development. We heard about the Green Comp framework and the Education for Climate Coalition. So these are my 3 main takeaways. And as we come to the close of this EPALE community conference, I really just as the last but not least thing I want to do is to really extend my heartfelt thanks to every one of you who participated, and in particular, of course, to the active speakers and to the EPALE Central Support Service that is behind organizing this event so smoothly, so smoothless in the also from the technical point of view. So thanks a lot to everyone who is behind this, and of course, many thanks to Tamsin. You have been with us since the ever first EPALE conference. So thank you. You're also giving a face to this very special days. That's it. I really wish that we stay together, connected via EPALE, and that we take the ideas and the inspiration from these days forward, and we build bridges to a better future together. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ulrike. And you've clearly listened and followed the last few days, because you saw some of the same highlights that we did. It's really, I think, been a powerful, really exciting conference. And I genuinely mean it. It's one of the highlights of my year, this conference, because the content and the passion and enthusiasm is so great. Thank you, Ulrike. And I'm sure you'll share that with your colleagues in the European Commission.
Certainly, I will. Thanks.
Thank you. So we get to the very last part, which is we need to first of all acknowledge the EPALE community itself, vibrant and growing, more than 150,000 registered users in Europe and beyond. And many of you participated really active in this conference itself. So to find out a little bit more, I'm delighted to invite Filippo to join me, please, to come on site. Filippo Mantioni, who's the community manager for EPALE, and who's going to tell us a little bit about how the community has developed. Filippo, for you.
Hello. Hi, Tamsin. Hi, yes, my name is Filippo Mantione from the EPALE Central Support Service. Yeah, I'm just here to quickly present some of the key numbers of this 2024 EPALE Community Conference. So let's have a look to these figures for these exciting 3 days. So let's start from views. In these 3 days, we had more than 3,200 views to the streamed conference. We also had more than 800 interactions. This includes online interactions, of course. So this includes likes, comments on the EPALE social media, which were streaming the conference in these 3 days, and also on the EPALE platform itself. And finally, as you mentioned during the conference, we had, in these 3 days, we had 14 national sites events which were organized by the EPALE National Support Services. We call them internally the NSSs. And in total, during these events, we had more than 1,000 participants, on-site participants. So which is remarkable. So of course, a big thank you also to the EPALE National Support Services, to all the participants in this exciting event, to the whole EPALE team that work hard to reach these numbers, also, of course, to you, Tamsin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo. It's really impressive to see how the community has grown and how the conference itself, despite the fact that it's a largely virtual format, is still engaging people and people want to be part of it. And we brought 1,000 people together in the different events across Europe. That's also wonderful to see. So we met up with some of the NSSs during the last 3 days, and that's the National Support Services. But there is another acronym, and that's the CSS, the Community Support Service. And as Ulrika said, they are the team that hold it all together, the team behind the EPALE community. So I'm going to call out their names, and they're all going to join us on screen so we can see them. So Sara Saleri and Claudia De Ramo are editorial coordinators. Hello. They are responsible for the amazing program that was put together that I'm sure you've all enjoyed so much. I also have Elisabetta Delia Esposito Nerli, who is the event manager who made it all run so smoothly, together with Giacomo Dalle Donne, who's the technical director. And if we had no major technical gremlins, it's thanks to them. I also, you've met Filippo, he's the community manager, but we also have Guido Andaragna, who is the social media manager, who again has been interacting with you and encouraging you across those platforms, and Roberto Sereno, who is the help desk. If you've got a problem, that's who you'll have been dealing with. We also want to welcome Alessia Capasso, who's the visual designer, so all the nice graphics and the colors that you saw today, Mircea Ghiman, who is the project lead, and their colleagues Mattias Marchioni with the technical backup. So I think collectively we are all on screen. This is the CSS team, and I'd like to offer them a round of applause. So thank you all for the hard work that you do all through the year, but specifically for this, the annual celebration, the chance everyone comes together and think through together some really big ideas and big concepts. It's been a great event. I've so enjoyed being with you all. Thank you all. And I think it's probably time to release people after 2.5 hours of amazing conference. See you all again, either on the EPALE platform at another event or this time next year. Thank you and goodbye.